Hello, and welcome to Ventures and Visionaries, Episode 12, Navigating Complex Family Business Dynamics. I'm your host, Morty Hackle, fractional CTO, entrepreneur, coach, and mentor. This podcast is about leadership, entrepreneurship, business, and innovation. How do all these different areas contrast, integrate, and complement each other? We are obviously seeking to create leverage and multiplication. The podcast is sponsored by KJ Technology, a strategic IT and cybersecurity advisor founded in 1998. KJ seeks to help people with technology challenges while delighting them with great customer service. Thank you, KJ Technology, for your continued support. Welcome to the show. Today, we are thrilled to have Jeff Savlov, the dynamic founder of Blum Savlov, join us. Jeff's background is truly impressive. With over 30 years of experience in various fields, Jeff brings his unique blend of sales, marketing, expertise, business ownership, and entrepreneurial endeavors, along with psychological training to offer a holistic approach to his clients. Family dynamics are challenging, and this is an exciting topic. I am very, very happy to have Jeff and hear and learn more from him. Please join me in welcoming Jeff to the podcast. So, Jeff, how are you doing today?
Thanks for the positive and energetic welcome. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here, and I'm excited to learn a little bit more about family dynamics. As one who works with family members, this is a topic that's very dear to my heart. So, obviously we didn't really speak much about your background. Maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this.
Sure. And since you and I each come from families, we're already experts.
Experts, maybe. Who knows?
As expert as anyone gets, so it's a bit of a story. I'll try to keep it succinct, but it really gives you a sense and listeners of sort of where I'm coming from and why I do what I do. But basically, going back in time a bit, my dad graduated high school, went into the Army right away. In the Korean War, he learned printing as a skill when he was printing maps for the war effort. He was in Germany. The Korean War was obviously in Korea, not Germany. But he was learning his trade, came back, blue-collar guy, union guy, working for other people's shops, very skilled, high-end lithography, high-end prints. But, he really took pride in his work, worked for other people. We got a house in the suburbs, and he got some equity in the house in addition to what he and my mom saved. She wasn't working. He was, like I said, a blue-collar guy, not making a lot of money, but they took it all and risked it for my dad to start his own business. And they sat down, me and my older and younger sisters, and explained sort of what was happening, how this was risky, not to scare us, but to let us know this was a big deal. Dad was going to be working hard. We might not see him as much. In middle school, when I found this out, I went into the city and worked whenever I could on the weekends. High school more, college even more. There was a second location that opened in New Jersey, which made it easier. While I was in school at Rutgers, I worked even more. And as the business grew and was becoming very successful, my dad was completely over his head. Like I said, blue-collar guy, high school, right to sort of the Army. He didn't have any experience running an organization. And while it grew, it was just beyond him, and he was stressed out. And I'm going to ask you, Morty, one guess, who do you think he took that stress out on?
Let me guess. His family.
Me. Specifically, family in general, but mostly me, because my sisters wouldn't go near the place. They knew what it was going to be like. I didn't want to just dump it on you. I figured it was probably a little bit more spread out. I was giving you a softball there, but you were being polite.
I'm just trying to be. We'll see. Okay, please.
So it was awful. Just kind of yelling and screaming for no reason, like just sort of taking his frustrations out on me. My mom sees this unfolding. Obviously she and my sisters didn't set foot in the business, but they saw what was happening when we came home and heard about it. And my mom, in her wisdom, found a psychologist that worked with parents and kids that were in business together. And my dad and I reached out, and she said, and this was really pretty interesting and stayed with me up until the present time. She said, I don't want to just see the two of you. I want Jeff, your sisters, and Harold, your wife. And we were like, they have nothing to do with the business. And she said, they have everything to do with the family. I work with families and businesses. I want everybody in. So that interested me. We went with it. And early on, we had a couple sessions. I was really proud of my dad for doing it because he was not a therapy guy, right? He was a guy who was born in 1936, right? This wasn't a therapy guy. And she was exploring his anger with him. And she opened up a little bit about his father. So now my dad is talking about his own father, who I knew a little bit when I was young. And he's talking about a story that I had heard bits and pieces of, but never heard in this much detail as this day with the psychologist. And he was talking about how his father escaped Latvia, we're Jewish, the Nazis and all that was happening. And he got to Mexico, and then he got to New York and got a job, and he was able to get his mother. This is my dad's father, did all that, got his mother to the United States. And then he learned that the whole family got wiped out by the Nazis. And the way he handled this, my grandfather, was to keep it a secret from his mother. He kept it inside so that his mother would not have to die knowing that her whole family had been wiped out. But he kept it inside, which has a cost of its own. So the therapist who's exploring anger in the family with my dad said, well, was your dad an angry guy? And my dad said, yeah, my dad was very angry. And she said, was he a hitter? And my dad said, he was. And she said, the belt. And my dad said, everyone used the belt back then. And then she said, and this stuck with me, she said, like once or twice or like 100 times. And my dad got this weird look on his face. And he said, I really don't remember. And it was either that he didn't remember because it was so upsetting, or he did and he didn't want to say it in front of us. But it was clear that he had had a really hard time. What happened next was absolutely transformative for me, and I think for my sisters. My dad spontaneously went on to say, when I was a kid going through all that horrible hitting, and it was awful, I made a commitment. I knew I was going to have kids one day. I wanted to get married. I wanted to have kids. And I said to myself, I will never lay a hand on my kids. And in that moment, in Hollywood, things happen in a therapy session in a minute and everyone's life changes. And that's pretty unrealistic. But in this moment, it really was like that. I realized, wow, this angry, yelly, screamy guy that I just thought must hate me or something actually was committing such an amazing act of love. We just didn't realize it because it was something that wasn't happening to us. We knew the yelling and screaming, which was awful. We didn't realize that he had been hit violently and had made a commitment to never do that to us. And so all of a sudden, the whole thing was flipped 180 degrees. And my sisters and I were like, wow. And my dad was 6'3", 285 pounds. So this was a nice bullet.
It's a big guy, right?
And then to move this along, I said, hey, listen, I don't even like commercial printing. I'm not interested. I was here to help you. Let's just be father and son. And he agreed. And I went into the corporate world of sales and marketing. I had a very good run at a young age, really exceptional. It was something I was good at. I just kept thinking about what that psychologist did for us. And I thought, if I could do that for families as a career, wow, that would be a calling and a career and a life. So I moved back home in my late 20s, back with mom and dad. My sisters were out of the house. I moved back home. I went to grad school, studied family and group dynamics, got trained as a family therapist. I did a lot of training in child development and parenting, which comes into play later. Graduated, did 7 years in a postgraduate psychoanalytic institute, got certified as a psychoanalyst, which a lot of people don't do. Very few people do anymore. 30 years ago, I started a private practice in talk therapy, and completely by coincidence, some of my early therapy patients had either an operating family business or generational wealth. And I got to know them really well as a therapist would. And I saw that there were really interesting dynamics, not just for me and my dad, but when families are sharing significant wealth or a business or both, and making decisions about working together and being bosses for each other and dealing with decisions about who's going to get what down the road, it's a whole other level of complexity. I like to say family is complex all on its own. Family and wealth or business, it just multiplies the complexity. So I realized that there was something that was needed that wasn't therapy, but was sort of what a therapist does, combined with, really lawyers, accountants, wealth managers didn't have this communication, family dynamics, psychology background, but they were doing part of the puzzle. So I saw myself as in between lawyers, accountants, wealth managers, insurance guys, and psychologists in the middle, creating this new kind of consulting 30 years ago. And back at the time, the Family Firm Institute, which is a professional organization for consultants that do this kind of work, educators, researchers, that was just starting out. Now it's a premier institution really in the world, but all this was happening for me and also other professionals at the same time. So really, that's how I started 30 years ago. I built it to where now I work with families with operating businesses, families that maybe had an operating business that sold for a significant amount of wealth, and now they share real estate investments, trusts, maybe a foundation. They still are families that share significant assets and have to make decisions as a group. And I help these family ownership groups with and without businesses to come together to be functional family ownership groups and to learn how to deal with conflict and family dynamics and still make decisions about their business and about who makes sense to work in the business and to be a leader and all of that. And then I mentioned that I had a significant amount of education with child development and parenting. And I didn't know that was I didn't know any of this was going to come together the way it did. But as I'm working with these wealthy families, and I'm seeing a lot of train wrecks where people work really hard, middle class people, even some pretty poor people I work with who've become worth hundreds of millions of dollars through unbelievable intense work that only, hardcore poverty can engender that kind of motivation sometimes. The next generation or 2 generations later, but often the next generation is a complete mess. And out of the goodness of their hearts, I saw parents doing things that didn't make any parenting sense because they didn't want their kids to have as hard of a life as they did. But they went way too far. They made it way too easy. And the kids just fell apart without any real motivation or character. And so I developed something called the Purposeful Legacy Family Project, where I will work with couples in these families before they even have kids to kind of understand their values and how they're similar and different, each spouse from the other, and then how to take all that and think about having children in that context before they have kids. Certainly, I hope to get to them before the kids are 5 years old. And that's a specialty area I have. And a lot of people are like, what in the world can you do with a 2-year-old that is going to affect how they inherit $30 million? And I would say, set the table, change the water in the dog's water bowl, clean up your room, all that kind of stuff is really where it starts. So Morty, I just threw a lot at you.
Yeah, seriously. So let's just drill in for 1 second. So you're suggesting that having chores, for lack of a better term, is incredibly healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. Having chores and not getting an allowance for them, that's sort of down the road, but just pitching in and helping the family, shoveling the driveway, weeding the garden. Even if you have gardeners and driveway shovelers, there's 100 ways that you can have kids participate in. Parents need to walk the walk. If parents are hiring other people to do things and then asking the kids to do stuff, it's going to be confusing. The kids should see their parents also doing work of some sort. That's important.
Interesting. But like you said, you absolutely backed up the truck, and there's a tremendous amount of information that you shared, which I think is wonderful, and I'd love to dig in a little bit more. So we talk a little bit about complex family dynamics and how the complexity only increases when you have a business or wealth involved. How do people best balance that level of complexity? Like, are there any keys that you found over the years that'll help people be more successful in that endeavor?
Yeah, no, it starts with the 2-year-old. If you have children who are willing to work hard and earn their way through being part of the family as a small child, or earn their way into the business by maybe visiting, even 5, 6, 7-year-olds can visit the business and learn about it and find little ways to contribute as they're growing older. And then really for families to set expectation. And a lot of this is not done the ideal way that I'm describing it to you, and that causes problems. But for families that are willing to learn about this stuff and do it, it makes a big difference to have a family employment policy. Maybe it says you can work in the family business part-time during summers, through middle school and high school, but we expect you to get a college degree or go for some kind of training, even sort of technical training if it applies to the business, but do some kind of education outside before you come into the business, and maybe even work somewhere else. Maybe I know clients who have a pest control business in New Jersey, and they send their kids for a year to a sort of a competitor that's really a colleague in California. They're not directly competing. They know each other through a professional association. Send their kids to the pest control place in California and see if your kid can hack it for a year or two, learn some stuff, maybe even get a deserved promotion, and then come back and bring some of what they learned to the family business, but show that they're willing to, get the degree, go somewhere, earn their way in and learn before they come. If you skip those steps, you just miss opportunities for kids to really understand how the world works separate from family.
Yeah, I would imagine that it also creates a certain amount of at least perceived nepotism within the business itself, whereas people view the child of an owner as somebody who's untouchable in a way.
Yeah, and that's why, if fair or not, children or grandchildren of an owner, or anyone who's a sort of part of the family ownership group working in a family business, they need to work harder than anyone else and prove themselves. And that's when they get the respect. When they start at the bottom, they work their way up. They're willing to get their hands dirty. They're willing to change the water in the water cooler, or make coffee, or like things like that while they're doing their other jobs really well. That shows people that this is someone that really cares and is not just getting it handed to them.
My daughter played for me this morning on the way in on the train a song called Trust Fund Baby, which is the antithesis of what exactly you're talking about. So I think that there's certainly a lot of truths to the irony that's presented in the song versus, somebody who needs to truly cut their teeth, learn the business, perhaps even with a competitor or cooperator. I don't know whatever the word would be in that case. Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you. Thank you for.
And there's I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, please.
There's a concept called wealthism, like racism or sexism. Wealthism is really a bias against wealthy people, and it's pretty strong. Even when someone, just knowing that someone is an inheritor, there's often a lot of jealousy and anger and disdain for someone who's an inheritor, even if they got a good education, worked hard, and even learned to maybe help grow the family's assets through investments or entrepreneurial endeavors. There's always this sort of feeling from other people that, well, you were handed it to you, so it's really not all that great. And it's really can be pretty rough, even for the most successful and well-developed, hardworking inheritors or next gen.
Okay. And that makes a lot of sense. Maybe we drill in on the different generations within the family. We spoke a lot, I guess, from the parents' view on how to raise the children, and the children a little bit from in terms of needing to work a little bit harder. But let's say I'm somebody who wants to groom myself to take over a family business. Other than going to school and potentially going to, work outside the family business, anything else that you suggest has been proven to be able to potentially reduce that bias or demonstrate my capabilities?
As a family member in the next generation trying to get into the family business?
Yes.
Yeah, it's really that simple. Work hard, learn about the business, go work outside in a similar industry and see what you can learn and bring back. Do various kinds of trainings that will help you be a better contributor in the business, but keep your nose to the grindstone. Be humble, right? When you lose being humble, you lose all the non-family people around you, and they're important people. Be humble, work hard, learn what you can, learn the business, and really show that you can contribute and really put in the extra time and effort. And if you're not interested, hopefully the family and this is a mistake families make all the time, they don't give a way out for people who want to be connected to the family. Or maybe they're hoping the resources of the family, money, mostly, can help them to do what they really love. Like, can you fund me to get a graduate degree in art history so I can work at a museum in wherever? Because we have the ability to do it, versus sucking me into the family business when I don't want to be there, because that's a big mistake. And I see both families letting in the next generation when they have really nothing to offer, or strong arming them in when they really have a passion that's somewhere else other than the business, and the family could easily support them to go and pursue that passion. Those are two mistakes you see pretty commonly.
Yeah, I'll love to jump into that in a minute, but let's go back to what you spoke a little bit about, the humility. Obviously, not obviously, but, I've been running a business for almost 30 years at this point, and I will say that the best team members, crew members, colleagues, employees, clients are always the ones that are humble. And I have to say that I'm incredibly impressed that in that world, you pointed out as that being the key to success, because I don't really know how one succeeds without being humble. There's so much to learn, and not everybody knows everything.
Yeah. Well, arrogant people succeed too, but they cause more havoc along the way and a lot of resentment, and the teams around them often are not so thrilled. But someone who comes to a position of power and leadership or even ownership with a sense of humility gets so much respect from those around them. And it's parenting. It really comes down to parenting. It's a parent's job to teach children the values of life, how life works, right? To correct a child and teach them when they're arrogant as a small child on the playground and explain respect and humility in a way that they can understand. And it's all really up to the parents and to previous generations to set up a culture of the family with values that make sense in general and in business.
So from the psychological perspective, it's obviously a lot easier to teach humility for somebody who doesn't have, because life really teaches you that. How does one teach humility when you do have?
Yeah. I've seen billionaires, that's with a B, who live in small homes, pack 3 boys into a small bedroom with bunk beds and a couple of girls into another small bedroom with a bunk beds, and go do a lot of camping and driving around the country in not super luxurious vehicles, but giving these experiences to their kids. And the kids never realize that they're billionaires until some point in middle or even high school when things seem to be going well. You'd be surprised how early you can tell kids, maybe not we're billionaires, but we have a lot more money than we need based on mommy or daddy's job. And we should think as a family, what do we do with the extra money we have? And all of that goes into it. But you parents have to walk the walk. Some of the families I work with, especially when they're about to have young kids, maybe they already have young kids or they didn't have kids yet. I say, where you choose to live is part of this equation. There are towns that are very wealthy, that are very flamboyant, and, go to the high school of the town you think you want to live in. You want to go to the high school where all these kids are driving, Jaguars and BMWs and whatever, convertible Mustangs, or like I live close to Princeton, just a suburb of Princeton, and Princeton High School's got like bicycles and old Honda Civics, and there's tremendous wealth, but there's a culture of walk, ride your bike, drive an old crappy car, and just live simply. Not everybody, but a lot more than a lot of the wealthy towns around where I live in New Jersey. And so you can actually pick a town that has a culture that supports what you're trying to do, because it does take a village. And if you're the one with the broken down Honda Civic, because, your parents are trying to teach you a lesson and everybody else has a beautiful car, it may teach you a lesson, or it may just humiliate you and make you stand out in a way that kind of backfires. So having a community that portrays and lives the values that you believe in can help.
Interesting. You've spoken a little bit about getting out to nature and, bicycling specifically. Well, we'll leave the beat up cars, the train cars, or, aside, but getting out to nature and being able to ride a bike is something that perhaps grounds people. Has that been your experience as well?
Absolutely. I read a popular blog, and I'm going to butcher the title of this one, but it was something like knives, fire, and something else. Knives, fire, and something else. But it really, and this is what I did. My wife and I did this with our kids. I'm not super wealthy like the families that I serve, but upper middle class, both are professionals. We have a lot of extra money, and in our town, live in a pretty nice section. When our kids would get dropped off, a regular yellow school bus taking them to summer camp, kids were on that bus from other parts of town. And I remember one day these 2 girls just came and knocked on the door, and I was like, "Hey, what's going on?" I didn't know who they were. They're like, "Oh, we're on Jeremy and Matthew's camp bus. We just had to see the inside of your house." And they were looking through the front door. And I'm talking 3,000 square feet. Okay. We're not talking about a monster, but to them, and it's in a really nice neighborhood with a nice lawn. It's all relative, right? But in terms of knives and fire, one of the things we did to engender this in our kids was a lot of camping. And, I remember giving my kids very sharp knives at a young age. My wife, my mother thought I was insane, but I taught them, right? It's not just about giving them opportunity and access. It's about teaching them. I showed them very early on how sharp it was. I took a piece of paper. I showed them it could slice right into it. I said, if you're very careful, you'll be fine, but you got to really be thoughtful and pay attention. Never had an accident with either son carving sticks and doing all kinds of stuff, because I explained to them that this was dangerous and sharp. They rose to the occasion. They felt proud that I was giving them something that was maybe above their level in some people's eyes, and dangerous, and letting them really learn and use it. Same thing with making a fire. It's thrilling to take a match or two, light up some kindling, and then really build a good roaring fire and keep it going and managing it, moving logs as they need more oxygen and whatever. And it's thrilling for a young kid. I taught them how to do it. I taught them the dangers. I told them that they could get burned just like they could get cut with the knives. So outdoors and simple things, and giving kids the ability to try things that are dangerous and challenging with support and education is such a great way to build character and resilience and all the wonderful things parents are looking for.
Oh, absolutely. I think that young people today are an interesting bunch, and that is not the topic of today's conversation, but it's certainly going to be interesting to see how both COVID as well the generation of the smartphone has really impacted people's ability to be resilient in a way that you're discussing now, something that's potentially difficult and or dangerous and or needs to be dealt with in a thoughtful way. And that's not really learned, or at least you see it on a video screen, but it doesn't really have the same kind of resonance as someone who's actually holding a sharp knife in their hands.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's all things that parents can do. The younger you go, the simpler it is to raise kids with good character and work ethic. And it's just as important for poor and working class parents as it is for wealthy parents. But you know what? Reality comes calling for the poor and working class kids. If you don't do your thing as a parent, reality and consequences are coming. When you're wealthy and you don't do the right thing, the money can fix a lot of the mistakes. And it's an endless cycle of just sort of fixing and patching and hoping things will turn around until you realize it's a big mess and you reach out for help. And sometimes it's too late.
Yeah, I often wonder if it's not really fixing, it's more of a cover-up. Meaning, like, if you don't truly deal with an issue and it either gets suppressed or covered over, or, certainly, those of us who are a little bit older and are familiar with the kind of techniques that the prior generation used to use as a coping mechanism. No judgment and not a fault of their own. It's either the way they were raised or it was just the way things were. Nobody really understood a lot of these issues back then. But not truly addressing issues head on, I often find to be a big problem. And I suffer it myself. This is not like I'm casting aspersions, But that goes back to, something we talked about earlier. And you mentioned that you spent time learning psychology and psychoanalytics. And can you speak a little bit about the role of psychology and training as you implemented in your business consulting, perhaps as you experienced it both as somebody in the printing business as well as somebody who's now providing the services?
Yeah, I don't know what to say. It was all a big accident. My dad started the business. I was in it. I went into the corporate world, had a good run in sales and marketing. I learned some stuff there. The psychoanalytic and family therapy training was super, super helpful. And it brought the whole thing full circle. It just informs so much, the family therapy, family systems. It's really about understanding how related groups of people interact and have norms and cultures of their own, and it really helped me to not only communicate better with my family by going to the psychologist we went to. I mean, I saw how this person transformed stuff for us by helping us to see pieces of the puzzle we weren't seeing. And it really helped us to appreciate each other in a new way. So that part, the family systems, looking at the different, members of the family and the dynamics of the family, that psychoanalytic work is really very much a one person thing, the inner mind of one person and how they experience the world. And I'm very much an integrator and synthesizer. And so having, what seems like, diametrically opposed training, family systems versus psychoanalytic, and in the world I'm in the clinical world, they're seen as almost like enemies in some unfortunate way. For me, it was just a beautiful combination of understanding how the complexity of an individual's personal psychology and the way they perceive the world and relate to people, and then the systems world of family. It just fits in and naturally is a fit for working with families where there are individuals with their own complex, psychological dynamics, and these groups of related people who are struggling to love each other and run something and grow something and make decisions together. I don't know if that answers your question, but there's my best shot.
No, I don't know that it does. It doesn't. It's just certainly interesting because, like, we're always encouraged to bring our whole self to work, right? Certainly when I was younger, people would talk about showing up to work and being a professional, and there was an aura and a behavior. And certainly as a kid, maybe no one told me this, but I believed that professional people behaved in a professional way. And as I grow older, I realize that in a world where authenticity is so lacking, just being able to be comfortable in your own skin is incredibly valued in the world because people don't really see it all that much. And just, I guess, being able to know where you're coming from a psychoanalytic perspective can make you a more effective either leader or contributor as a situation and family as well, obviously.
Yeah, self-awareness. And again, it's humility is connected to self-awareness, not blaming your stuff on other people, not taking your anger or your anxieties and blaming them on other people, which happens, leaders do that all the time and they can wreck the place. Being able to sort of have some self-awareness and to deal with your own stuff makes a huge difference.
Yeah, funnily enough, by the way, as we speak about psychoanalytics and, the armchair psychologist in me always used to speak to my teammates and say that the job of an IT guy is 50% technology, but the other 50% was psychologist. Everyone talks to their IT guy about all the frustrating things that happen on their computer, everything from the mouse not mousing to the thing blue screening or God knows whatever else, the spinning beach ball of death if you're on a Mac. In any event, so, it resonates both with the recipient of said TLC or the provider of the TLC. And if you do a poor job at it and you don't let the person vent, then it's interesting because you may have solved the technical problem, but you didn't really solve the real problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a writer, Brene Brown. She's become real famous. She has a master's degree in clinical social work like I do. And she's written a lot about vulnerability and shame and basically the power of vulnerability, of being vulnerable, of not having to have all the answers, of being able to let people know you're struggling. Hey, can you help me? I mean, for leaders of big companies and small companies alike, and just in the world, the value of vulnerability. And it takes a certain amount of self-esteem and just kind of like inner structure to be vulnerable and say, hey, you know what, I need help. The best leaders nowadays surround themselves with people smarter than them. And they're just looking to, how do I support these smart people that I have around me? 50 years ago, post World War II, it was the military structure. I'm the general, do what I say. I'm not vulnerable because that means I don't have, if not having the answer means I'm not a good leader. So I'll just make something up, even if it's not the best thing. And now we have a much different culture for the most part. And leadership is around servant leadership. And how do you support the people around you and show and allow for vulnerability?
How can parents in business work on themselves, with themselves? Any suggestions that you have in order to be able to cultivate said vulnerability?
Mm-hmm. I mean, family therapy or a consultant like me with that kind of background, I think what's so powerful, not to make this about me, there are plenty of people out there, or at least a small group who have my kind of background. I could show you a video of a family, me working with a family, and you'll think, oh, Jeff's clearly doing family therapy. And the same family, maybe an hour later, oh, Jeff's really doing, organizational development work around the roles and responsibilities with the family. And it's really both. So if there's an openness one way or another through either personal therapy or through having someone with a clinical background who's a consultant who can help members of the family understand themselves, lots of consultants out there without even a clinical degree have access to various kinds of assessments. DISC is one. There's a lot of others out there. I was just trying to think of the name of one, and I'm blanking on a popular one. But there's plenty of them that consultants use that help people to understand themselves better, and there's plenty of ways to go about that.
Oh, if we had another couple hours, we could talk about the art of testing. At KJ, we use predictive index, which we really like, and we used DISC back in the day. Found that predictive index was more business oriented. I don't know if that's been your experience, meaning like it helps us craft job personality profiles and then work off those to be able to do some of the hiring. But this is not about those kinds of tools, but just out of curiosity, I would imagine that in a family in particular, decision making is incredibly difficult. So who's in charge, especially if kids are coming in and now there's a struggle for power, if you will, and young people always believe that older people don't know how to do it, today's way, and which is all fine and dandy because that's a good thing. It helps clear out some of the, more staid approaches. That said, sometimes wisdom is gained through trial by fire. Like, how do you help families create a structure to allow for wise decision making within multi-generational businesses?
I think it's really important to have a vision for what you're trying for the family. Having a vision, mission, right, values for the business is one thing, but separate vision and mission and values for the family. Here's who we are as a family. This is what we want to. This is what we want to create, and here are the values that will guide us as a foundation. And then through mentoring, often the senior generation needs some coaching on how to be a mentor. I had a client who gave me the best line. It's, I want to be a mentor, not a tormentor. And can you help me with that? And I even wrote a blog called, Mentor or Tormentor, because I think it's just a beautiful use of the language, but it's easy. It's a fine line. And so just yesterday, I'm starting with a new client, and we're talking about ground rules for family meetings. And I don't give them any ideas. I just say, what do you think are some of the ground rules? And every family comes up with some pretty wonderful stuff. Like, we should be respectful to each other. We should be open-minded. We should, try to be open to new ideas. And we came up with a kind of a big sloppy bunch. And then the father says, this is answering your question about how do you teach decision making. The father says to his, executive assistant, okay, take everything we just said and kind of clean it up and bring it back next week. And I said, and I'm new, so I have to be careful. I said, if it's okay with you, Mr. Patriarch, how about me and one of your daughters who you're looking to develop into a leader? How about me and one of your daughters, we jump on a call and we, revise it and think it through. So instead of just handing it off to his very experienced and competent assistant, always think about, what are we doing? How can I teach the next generation? How can I find an opportunity in everything I'm doing to give the next generation an opportunity to be involved? And often when you've been a successful patriarch, matriarch of a wealth creator, you sort of try to deal with the family piece the way you did as a leader of your company, which is to sort of be the head person and do a lot of quick decision making. And it's a new skill set that's often difficult and even frustrating and infuriating to have someone like me, who you're paying to come in, say to you, hey, hang on a second, let's slow down. How about have your daughter, right? That's the whole goal. You forgot the goal. The goal was to look for ways for your daughters to be more involved. He's frustrated that they're not involved, but look at him. He's not giving them a chance to breathe.
So how do you hand them the sharp knife and teach them how to wield it responsibly?
Again, mentoring and giving them opportunities and education, right? What did I do with my kids? I taught them a lot about what was about to happen, and I gave them a chance to succeed or fail. And they were very unlikely to cut themselves in the jugular, but they might cut their fingers or hands, right? And so allowing for failure, but enough support that it's not catastrophic failure, right? Small opportunities to fail in ways that aren't going to be catastrophic, and learn from them.
One of our service delivery heads speaks about failing fast and failing forward. So I think that those are definitely good ways to learn, so long as you don't keep on making the same mistakes. We have a few more minutes, but I wanted to speak a little bit about, you spoke about purposeful legacy at the beginning. Is that a passion project for you? Is that something else? Like, what are you doing with that?
The Purposeful Legacy Family Project, that is something I'm very passionate about. It is hard to find enlightened parents who are willing to hire someone like me when they've got a 2-year-old. It's just it doesn't connect, right? They don't, even if they usually don't know it's out there, and when they do hear about it, it just sounds like that seems like too young. They're thinking about, me, I'm coming in and I'm going to talk to a 2 or 3-year-old about how rich the family is. It misses the point, right? It's really about parenting. But I certainly in the last few years have had more takers on this project, and parents who are realizing, yeah, I've seen the train wrecks that have happened from wealth with unintentional parenting, and if there's some expertise out there, I want to get my hands on it And it's absolutely super rewarding because the people who do reach out are very enlightened and forward thinking and open to learning. And it's really a lot of fun. And I go deep with each member of the couple and their whole life history, not just about money, but about everything, because it all comes together with how they feel about money and wealth and parenting and life, in the current time. And so it's just a lot of fun, and it's really impactful, and it's so proactive. It's not about fixing a problem. It's really about making the best of the situation you have.
There's so many parallels between what you're describing on the familial side and what we do when we deal with role-based IT security, trying to understand what exactly your business is, how exactly you're going to design it in such a way that you have the security without stopping the business from being able to function. It's an interesting parallel. Whereas you're diving into the mind and we're diving into the machine, ultimately arriving at probably the same place. And I think that's kind of interesting. Where do you see family businesses evolving to, going into 2025?
Um, I think there is more of an openness to the fact that if you don't really understand and manage how the family and the dynamics of the family interplay with the business or the wealth, if you don't take that seriously, you're just giving up a big opportunity to be a healthy and harmonious family that's doing entrepreneurial things. So I do see families, just like with my Purposeful Legacy Family Project, I see families are really open to that piece of the puzzle. And it's just crucial, right? Business is hard enough on its own. Family is hard enough on its own. Combining the two, you really got to manage that interplay and take it seriously, right? You have a strategic plan for your business. You need some kind of a plan for how you're going to constantly assess and manage and nurture the family dynamics and how all that comes together. So I think there's more of an openness to that, and it's really and also impact, making an impact with wealth and making a positive impact in the world is another thing that's really popular in families and the next generation coming up nowadays.
Just because I'm a technologist at heart, I have to ask the question, are there any technologies or any technology platforms that you're finding that can either aid you or aid families in some of these journeys?
Yeah, there's some organizations out there developing some great platforms for families, family offices, for wealthy families to communicate, to have documents. There's so many documents around, trusts and estate plans and operating agreements. These platforms are secure and they allow family members all over the world to access, what everybody's allowed to access, and maybe subgroups of the families can have access to small subgroups of documents. But there's also just communication in these platforms and family history, and it's a real kind of like a central point for the family. And there's at least a couple organizations I know that I've come across that are using technology in that way. And then there's people who are doing various kinds of kind of multimedia family histories that they share, professionals who will do those and then share them with the family so that the future generations, currently born and not yet born, will be able to look at these and understand who the founder was, what they wanted to accomplish with the wealth. You can have people who have a trust who never met the wealth creator. The wealth creator died before they were born. These kinds of things allow someone to have a little bit of insight into who that person was and what their hopes were for how the wealth would generate positivity.
Right. Most of us don't know our great great grandparents, and therefore, how would we possibly have the ability to connect with them? So this is leveraging technology to truly introduce one generation to the next. Wow, that is certainly a fascinating idea. I love it. I love it also just in terms of, smaller groups, because when you have just even a smaller business, once people start coming on board, business takes off. It's a lot harder to maintain insight into the vision of the business. So having technology tools that allow you to understand the original purpose, the original intent, what problem you were looking to solve, where does the passion come from? I think that's could be very interesting. I think we are just about out of time, and I am super, super excited, Jeff, for you had the opportunity to spend some time with me. Any last thoughts? Would you like to share how people could reach out to you if they're interested in learning more about what you do and how they could connect with you for some new opportunities?
Yeah, sure. I'm sure you'll have the contact info on however you share this. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it's Jeff Savlov, Savlov. My website, you can search Jeff Savlov Family Business and you'll find it. My website is blumsavlov.com, BLUMANDSAVLOV.com. Again, I'm sure you'll have that stuff easily connected to wherever this goes, but if that helps, that's where people can find me.
100%. We will have everything about Jeff on the show notes, but certainly wanted to give you an opportunity to speak about that a little bit. So again, Jeff, thank you so much for joining us today. And I want to put in, once again, thank KJ Technology as the sponsor of Ventures of Visionaries. KJ Technology, as I mentioned before, provides advisory, cybersecurity, and proactive process services consulting, also fully managed IT services. If you want any additional information, please feel free to reach out to me or to any of the members of KJ Technology, info@kjtechnology.com. Once again, Jeff, thank you very, very much. And everybody, appreciate you for listening and have a great day.